Welcome back to Leeds Lately. Leeds have, of course, just drawn 0-0 away at Turf Moor. Before we get into that, make sure you go ahead and hit that big red button down below. But look, I mean, a 0-0 draw is always a bit disappointing and maybe a bit boring to watch. But before the game, I said I think I would have been happy with a 1-1, or I would have expected a 1-1. I didn't realise that they hadn't conceded a goal in. Oh, there's LUFC Lewis. He was just on the Sky Sports footage there. Yeah, look, I think before the game I said, and I would have expected us to probably draw. They've not conceded in 8 games now, I think. 600 minutes or something like that, I think somebody said in our chat. It's ridiculous. It really is ridiculous, a defensive record. Fair play to them for having it, but a bit boring, innit, mate? Like, grow up. Just concede some goals and then maybe you'll score more as well by being a bit more attacking. It's a bit pathetic, really. But jokes aside, they don't score many goals, so they didn't score against us. They don't concede many goals, so they didn't concede against us. And that was the way it went, really. There wasn't a shot on target until like the 80-odd minute. That was Dan James's volley against James Trafford, which pretty much went straight at him, and he was able to kind of do one of those palm over the bar. It was a powerful volley from when the corner came back across, but I just think that neither team really wanted to push for the victory too much. I think from the start, if you'd have asked Daniel Farker, if it was an option for Daniel Farker and Scott Parker to go and shake hands and say, point apiece, they would have shook each other's hand, definitely, because I think that's what they played for. They had a couple of headers early on in the game, Burnley, where ball was whipped into the box by Jayden Anthony, of course, ex-Leeds United man from last season, and Zian Fleming had a couple of headers that just went wide of the post, weren't great, snapshots really. And other than that, they didn't threaten at all, really. I don't think they threatened at all, apart from maybe later on where Jayden Anthony squared one right across the face of goal. It was given offside, but he wasn't offside, and it didn't result in a goal anyway. But before we go on to Leeds, let's talk about the refereeing, because the refereeing again in this game was terrible. First of all, early on in the game, Solomon was defending and cleared the ball off Anthony, which went out for what should have been a Leeds goal kick, and it was given as a corner. So then, of course, Solomon complains about it, gets himself a yellow card. Similar thing happened later on with Bogle, where he'd made a perfectly good tackle, and then he'd been fouled, when he was near the touchline. He should have had a free kick for Leeds near the corner flag, which was in a decent position. They just gave a goal kick, even though it was definitely a foul on him. We should have had a penalty. And I think that even if this was the other way around and Burnley had done it against us, I think I would have felt lucky to get away with it, because the ball is whipped into the box, or crossed into the box, lofted in really, for Sam Byram to chest down. Now, Sam Byram's not Ronaldo, and I'm talking about the real Ronaldo here. I'm not even going to say it. The Brazilian Ronaldo. It's not him. He's not the most amazing striker in the world. He's not going to chest it down a volley in the top corner, but Jayden Anthony comes ploughing into him. It's a shoulder with a slight raised elbow, and he knocks him over to the deck really forcefully. In terms of, the reason I would say forcefully is because it could just be a 50-50 shoulder-to-shoulder challenge, but Byram is trying to chest the ball down and go forward. Anthony just comes in and knocks him over, really. I think that should have been a penalty. The referee didn't give it. The referee throughout the game was consistently making bad decisions and giving yellow cards to Leeds players, and just in general being very one-sided towards Burnley, I thought, in my opinion. And obviously so was Don Goodman as well on commentary. We won't even get into that, but the bias levels are unbelievable. Anyway, in terms of our actual performance, it did feel, like I said before, that Farker had come into this game a little bit like that he would be happy to take a draw, because the fact that we started with Tanaka and Gruev, people were saying in the chat before we started the game, potentially that's a bit of a defensive move. So I thought, well, okay, let's give it the benefit of the doubt. Let's watch the game and see how it progresses. Now, Gruev did drop between the centre-backs, allowing Tanaka to go a little bit further forward, and sometimes that swapped around, but we never really kind of went for it in this game. I do feel like there was opportunities for us down the right-hand side. Dan James and Bogle were having a fair bit of joy down that right-hand side, but they were never excuse me, they were never able to actually create anything clear-cut, apart from Dan James's shot that went across the face of goal early on as well. So I just feel like both teams kind of played it safe and played for a draw. Do I think that's the worst thing in the world? No, I don't, because like I said, I was expecting a draw when we came into this game, and I also think in these types of games against teams that are at the top of the league, who don't concede any goals, who don't score that many, you're kind of expecting it to be a draw. And when it is, you've not dropped points. You've stayed top of the league. The fact that Sheffield United lost 3-0 and Sunderland drew 2-2 to Plymouth, it doesn't mean as much. It's not so much of a bad thing that we've just taken a point from today's game. Now, people will say, yeah, we need to be ambitious, but teams who win leagues sometimes have to play games like this where they go out and get a draw and get an extra point towards their total, because if we'd have thrown the bus at it, thrown the kitchen sink at it instead of parking the bus, then I know we didn't technically park the bus, but just in terms of like the opposite ends of the scales, if we'd have properly thrown the kitchen sink at it, I don't think that we would have even got a point from the game. I think potentially they would have been able to counter-attack through somebody like Jayden Anthony, who we know his qualities. I think that we potentially would have lost the game 1-0, and it would have been really disappointing to lose when, to be honest, I know that we dominated possession in nearly every game, but I do think that we realistically were the team on top the whole game. It was the same at Elland Road as well. I feel like we should have got more out of that game. But this season, we seem to beat everybody else. When we play the top 4/top 6, we've drawn against 4 of them. It's just kind of like, make sure you get some points away from those games. Beat everybody else, which is a fair enough tactic, because there are more minnows than big fish, if we're going to put it in that kind of analogy. There are more minnows than big fish in this league. So beat everybody else, and then when it comes to the top teams, get a point away from them, get 3 points away from them if you can. But at minimum, take a point away from those games. And I think that's kind of what we've done today. So it wasn't the worst performance in the world. It wasn't the best performance in the world. We're 1 point better off than we were. Burnley are 1 point better off than they were. Sheffield United and Sunderland are 1 point better off than they were. And Sheffield United haven't budged. So we're still in the same position we were, essentially. We're still in the same position we were essentially. So I just think that it's one that we have to kind of chalk off, move on to the Cardiff game at the weekend, which we're at home against Cardiff. You'd like to think that we'll be able to win that game. So it'd be nice to get 3 points there. And then we've got Coventry, and then it's the FA Cup. So if we can get 6 points out of these next 2 games, I think that stands us in really, really good stead going into the rest of the season after that FA Cup game against Millwall, which will also allow us to rest a few players and bring a few players in who don't get full games a lot of the time. So that's my kind of thoughts on that game. Let me know what you thought down in the comments below. I'm not too angry about us not going for it as much as maybe we could have done. Let me know what you thought. Could we have done better? Are you happy with the point? And yeah, thanks for watching Leeds Lately. I'll see you in the next one.